The old pickup truck bounced along the dusty road as Jacob drove toward town. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. He gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual. Today wasn't a good day. The bank letter in his shirt pocket felt heavy, even though it was just a piece of paper. 3 months behind on the ranch payments. The cattle prices had dropped again, and winter was coming fast. Jacob was 45 years old, but some days he felt much older. His hands were rough from years of ranch work, and his face was weathered from spending most of his life outdoors. The wrinkles around his eyes came from squinting in the sun, not from smiling much. He hadn't had much reason to smile in the past 15 years. The ranch house felt too big and too quiet these days. Every room held memories he tried not to think about. The nursery upstairs still had dust covers over everything. He told himself for years that he would clean it out, maybe turn it into an office or storage room, but he never did. Some wounds just stayed fresh, no matter how much time passed. As he pulled into the small town of Cedar Valley, Jacob noticed more empty storefronts than last month. Times were hard for everyone, not just ranchers. The hardware store was still open, thank goodness. He needed to pick up some supplies before the next snowfall. Winter came early in Montana, and it came hard. Jacob parked his truck outside Miller's general store. The bell above the door would ring when he walked in, just like it had when he was a kid coming to town with his father. Some things never changed in small towns. That was both comforting and lonely at the same time. But as he walked toward the store, he heard voices. Angry voices. A woman was arguing with someone near the side of the building. Jacob normally minded his own business. In small towns, you learned when to look and when to look away. But something about the tone made him pause. "You promised me $3,000, a harsh voice said. It was an older woman, maybe in her 50s. Her clothes looked worn and her hair needed washing. "I need that money tonight or they'll take my house tomorrow." Jacob couldn't see who she was talking to at first. Then he heard a younger voice, shaky and scared. "Mom, please, there has to be another way. I can't do this." "You can and you will," the older woman snapped. "This is your fault anyway. If you hadn't gotten yourself in trouble, we wouldn't be in this mess." Jacob's stomach tightened. He'd heard enough family fights in his life to know when something was very wrong. He took a few steps closer, staying in the shadows by his truck. That's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, standing with her back against the brick wall. She was pregnant, very pregnant, probably 7 or 8 months along. Her dark hair hung around her face, and even in the dim light, Jacob could see she'd been crying. "Elena, stop being selfish," the older woman continued. "Mr. Peterson is a good man. He has money. He'll take care of you and the baby." Elena, that was her name. Jacob watched as she wrapped her arms around her belly like she was trying to protect her unborn child from the conversation. "He's 60 years old, Mom," Elena whispered, "and he drinks." "You know what happened to Mrs. Peterson before she left him?" Jacob's jaw clenched. Everyone in the county knew Bill Peterson. The man owned a few businesses in town and thought his money gave him the right to treat people however he wanted. Jacob had seen Peterson at the cattle auctions, always trying to cheat ranchers out of fair prices. The thought of that man anywhere near this frightened young woman made Jacob's blood boil. "That's not our problem," Elena's mother said coldly. "You should have thought about that before you got pregnant. Now Peterson is willing to marry you and give us the money we need." End of discussion. Elena started crying harder. "Please, Mom, I'll get a job. I'll work extra shifts at the diner after the baby comes. We can figure something else out." "With what skills?" "You barely finished high school. You think you can make enough money waitressing to save the house?" Her mother's voice got meaner. "Peterson leaves town tomorrow for 2 weeks. This is our only chance. He's coming to pick you up at 8 o'clock. Jacob looked at his watch. It was already 7:30. "I won't do it," Elena said, her voice stronger now. "You can't make me marry him." "Watch me," her mother replied. "You're 19 and pregnant, with no money and nowhere to go. You'll do exactly what I tell you, or you can live on the streets with that baby." Jacob had heard enough. His boots made soft sounds on the gravel as he stepped out of the shadows. Both women looked up, startled. "Evening, ladies," Jacob said quietly. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. "I couldn't help but overhear. Sounds like you might be in some trouble?" Elena's mother straightened up, trying to look respectable. "This is a private family matter, Mr. Matthews." "Jacob Matthews." He touched the brim of his hat politely. "I own the Double M Ranch about 10 miles out of town." Elena looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. She probably thought he was another man looking to take advantage of her situation. Jacob's heart broke a little seeing that fear. "Well, Mr. Matthews, like I said, this is private," Elena's mother continued. "We don't need any help." Jacob looked directly at Elena. "Miss, are you here by your own choice?" Elena glanced at her mother, then back at Jacob. She was trembling. "And not just from the cold evening air?" I don't know what you mean. I mean, do you want to marry Mr. Peterson?" "That's enough," Elena's mother stepped forward. "You have no right to interfere in our business." Jacob ignored her and kept looking at Elena. "It's a simple question, miss. Do you want to marry Bill Peterson?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "No, I don't." "Then you shouldn't have to," Jacob said simply. Elena's mother laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You don't owe $3,000 to loan sharks who will burn down your house if they don't get paid by tomorrow morning." Jacob was quiet for a moment. $3,000 was a lot of money, especially these days. But he had some savings, money he'd been keeping for emergencies. He'd never imagined an emergency like this. What if someone else paid that debt? Jacob asked. Both women stared at him. Elena's mother looked suspicious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I gave you the $3,000? Would that solve your problem?" "Jacob," Elena spoke for the first time since he'd approached. Her voice was soft but clear. "You don't even know us. Why would you do that?" Jacob looked at her again. There was something about this young woman that reminded him of someone he'd lost long ago. Not the way she looked, but the way she seemed so alone and scared. The way she was trying to be brave even when everything was falling apart. "Because everyone deserves a choice," he said. "And because no one should be forced into marriage to pay off someone else's debts." Elena's mother's eyes lit up with greed. "You'd really pay $3,000? Just like that?" "Not just like that," Jacob said carefully. "I'd want something in return." Elena stepped back, fear filling her eyes again. Jacob quickly held up his hand. "Not what you're thinking, miss. I'm not like Peterson." Jacob took a deep breath. "I'd want you to come to my ranch. Let me take care of you and the baby. Not as a wife, just as someone who needs help. You'd have your own room, your own space. No obligations except letting me help you." Elena stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "I don't understand." "My ranch is big and empty," Jacob explained. "I live alone, and I have been for a long time. I have plenty of money to take care of you and the baby. You'd be safe there. When you're ready, when the baby is older, you can decide what you want to do with your life. But you'd never have to marry someone you don't want to marry." Elena's mother grabbed her daughter's arm. "Elena, this is perfect. He'll pay the debt, and you'll be taken care of." "Wait," Elena said, pulling away from her mother. She looked at Jacob with confusion and hope warring in her eyes. "Why would you do this for a stranger? What do you really want from me?" Jacob thought about how to answer that. He wasn't sure he understood it himself. Maybe it was because he knew what it felt like to lose everything that mattered. Maybe it was because he'd been alone so long that helping someone else seemed like the only way to feel human again. "I want to do something good," he said honestly. "It's been a long time since I had the chance to help someone who really needed it, and maybe having someone around the ranch would be good for both of us." Elena studied his face. Jacob could see her trying to decide if she could trust him. He didn't blame her for being careful. After what her own mother was trying to do to her, she had every reason to be suspicious of strangers. "If I came to your ranch," Elena said slowly, "I could leave any time I wanted?" "Any time," Jacob confirmed. "I'd drive you wherever you wanted to go." And you wouldn't expect ... anything from me? Jacob's voice was firm. Nothing except letting me help you. Elena looked at her mother, who was practically bouncing with excitement at the thought of getting her money. Then she looked back at Jacob. In the distance, they could hear a truck approaching. Elena's face went pale. That's Peterson, her mother said. He's early. Elena's breathing got faster. She looked trapped, like a wild animal with nowhere to run. Jacob stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle. You have a choice, he said quietly. Right now you have a choice. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked directly at Jacob. If you're lying to me, if you're not who you say. The truck ride to the ranch felt like the longest 30 minutes of Elena's life. She kept her hands folded over her belly, watching the headlights cut through the darkness. Every few minutes she glanced at Jacob, trying to figure out what kind of man would pay $3,000 for a complete stranger. Part of her wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The other part of her knew that anything was better than marrying Bill Peterson. Jacob didn't try to make conversation during the drive. He seemed to understand that she needed time to think. The radio played soft country music, and Elena found herself relaxing slightly. At least he wasn't trying to touch her or ask personal questions right away. When they finally turned onto a long gravel driveway, Elena saw lights in the distance. The ranch house was bigger than she'd expected, with a wide front porch and warm yellow light glowing in the windows. It looked like the kind of place she'd seen in magazines, but never thought she'd actually visit. Here we are, Jacob said quietly, as he parked the truck. Home, Elena stared at the house. It's beautiful. It's been in my family for 3 generations, Jacob replied. My grandfather built the original cabin, my father expanded it, and I haven't done much with it lately. He got out of the truck and came around to help her down. Elena was grateful for the assistance. At 8 months pregnant, getting out of vehicles had become a challenge. Jacob was careful not to touch her more than necessary, which made her feel a little safer. The front door opened before they reached the porch. A large golden dog bounded out, tail wagging furiously. Elena stepped back, startled. That's Buddy, Jacob said with what might have been a smile. He's friendly? Been my only company for the past few years. Buddy sniffed Elena's hand gently, then seemed to sense something special about her condition. Instead of jumping up like he probably usually did, he sat down and let her pet his head. He likes you, Jacob observed. That's a good sign. Inside. The house was warm and clean, but Elena could tell it was missing something. It felt like a place where someone lived alone. The furniture was practical but not comfortable. There were no pictures on the walls, no flowers on the tables, none of the little touches that made a house feel like a home. Are you hungry? Jacob asked. I could make you something to eat. Elena realized she hadn't eaten since breakfast. Her mother had been too nervous about the Peterson meeting to think about food. I am a little hungry, she admitted. Jacob led her to the kitchen, which was larger than her mother's entire apartment. He opened the refrigerator and frowned. I'm not much of a cook, he said apologetically. I usually just make simple things. How about scrambled eggs and toast? That sounds perfect, Elena said. She watched him move around the kitchen, noticing how he seemed comfortable but lonely at the same time. Can I help? You should sit down, Jacob said, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table. You've had a long day, Elena sat down gratefully. The baby had been active all evening, probably responding to her stress. She rubbed her belly gently, trying to calm the little one inside. Jacob cooked quietly, occasionally glancing over at her. When he set the plate in front of her, Elena realized how hungry she actually was. The eggs were perfectly cooked, and the toast was golden brown. Thank you, she said. This is really good. You're welcome. Jacob sat down across from her, with his own plate. Elena, I want you to know that you don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. But if you want to talk, I'm a good listener. Elena took a few more bites, thinking. She wasn't used to adults treating her with kindness. Her mother had always been critical and demanding. The baby's father had disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant. Jacob was the first person in months who seemed to care about what she needed. The baby's father, she said slowly. He left town when I told him about the pregnancy. Said he wasn't ready to be a father and had plans for college. Jacob nodded but didn't say anything judgmental. That surprised Elena. Most adults had opinions about unmarried pregnant teenagers. My mom has always had problems with money, Elena continued. She likes to gamble. Started with lottery tickets, then moved to bigger things. She'd borrowed money from some bad people, and when she couldn't pay it back, Elena gestured to her belly. She decided I was her solution. That must have been very frightening, Jacob said quietly. Elena looked up at him. His eyes were kind, but sad, like he understood what it felt like to have your life turned upside down. What about you? She asked. Why do you live here all alone? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Elena thought maybe she'd asked something too personal, but then he started talking. I was married once, he said. Her name was Rebecca. We tried for years to have a baby. When she finally got pregnant, we were so happy. We painted the nursery, picked out names, bought all kinds of baby clothes. Jacob's voice got softer. She was 8 months along when the accident happened. Elena felt her heart break a little. What kind of accident? Car crash on an icy road. She was coming home from town, probably buying more baby things. Jacob stared at his hands. I lost them both that night. Rebecca and our son? I'm so sorry, Elena whispered. She understood now why the house felt empty, why Jacob seemed so alone. That was 15 years ago, Jacob continued. I thought I'd never get over it. Most days I still don't think I have. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Elena finished her eggs and felt the baby settle down inside her. Maybe the little one could sense that they were safe now. I want to show you your room, Jacob said finally. I fixed it up today after I decided to bring you here. Elena followed him upstairs, Buddy trailing behind them. Jacob opened the door to reveal a spacious bedroom with a comfortable-looking bed, a rocking chair by the window, and a small dresser. The room smelled like fresh paint and cleaning supplies. I bought some things in town, Jacob said, pointing to a pile of clothes on the bed. Maternity clothes and some things for after the baby comes. I guessed at the sizes, but we can exchange them if they don't fit. Elena picked up a soft blue sweater and held it against herself. It was the nicest piece of clothing she'd owned. In years, you didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, Jacob said simply. The bathroom is right across the hall. There are fresh towels and soap. If you need anything during the night, my room is downstairs. Don't hesitate to wake me up. Elena sat down in the rocking chair and looked out the window. Even in the darkness, she could see the vastness of the ranch. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe freely. Jacob, she said as he turned to leave. Why are you really doing this? And please be honest with me. Jacob stopped in the doorway. Because when I saw you tonight, scared and alone, it reminded me that there's still good I can do in this world. I've been feeling sorry for myself for 15 years. Maybe it's time I tried to help someone else instead. What if I'm not who you think I am? What if I cause you trouble? Jacob smiled, and Elena realized it was the first real smile she'd seen from him. Elena, you're 19, 8 months pregnant, and brave enough to walk away from everything you knew rather than marry a man you didn't love. I think you're exactly who I think you are. After Jacob left, Elena unpacked the clothes he'd bought. Everything fit perfectly, and she wondered how he'd known her size. She changed into a comfortable nightgown and sat back down in the rocking chair. Outside, she could hear the wind blowing across the plains and the distant sound of cattle settling for the night. Inside, she could hear the house settling too, but it wasn't scary like the creaking sounds in her mother's old apartment. This felt peaceful. Elena placed both hands on her belly and felt the baby move. We're going to be okay, she whispered. I don't know exactly how, but I think we're going to be okay. For the first time in months, Elena fell asleep without crying. And downstairs, Jacob sat in his living room with Buddy at his feet, feeling something he hadn't felt in 15 years, purpose. For the first time since Rebecca's death, he had A reason to get up in the morning that had nothing to do with just keeping the ranch running. He looked up at the ceiling, knowing Elena was sleeping in the room above him. Tomorrow, they'd start figuring out how to make this arrangement work. Tonight, it was enough to know that she was safe, and that he'd finally done something good with all the loneliness he'd been carrying around. Outside, the wind continued to blow across the Montana plains, but inside the ranch house, two broken people were beginning to heal each other without even realizing it yet. Elena had been living at the ranch for 3 weeks when the first big snowstorm of the season hit Montana. She woke up that Tuesday morning to find the world outside her bedroom window completely white. Snow was still falling heavily and the wind was howling like a wild animal. Downstairs, Jacob was already up, making coffee and checking the weather reports on his old radio. Elena had gotten used to his early morning routine. He was always up before sunrise, taking care of the animals and checking on things around the ranch. "Looks like we're going to be snowed in for a while," Jacob said when Elena came into the kitchen. "The roads are already impassable, and it's supposed to keep snowing until tomorrow night." Elena poured herself a cup of tea and sat down at the kitchen table. She'd been having stronger contractions for the past 2 days, but Dr. Wilson had told her that was normal in the final weeks. The baby wasn't due for another 10 days. "I've never seen snow this deep," Elena said, watching the flakes pile up against the window. "It's beautiful but kind of scary," Jacob nodded. "Montana winters can be brutal, but we have plenty of food, firewood, and supplies. We'll be fine." He looked at her with concern. "How are you feeling today?" Elena shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The baby seemed to be pushing against her ribs constantly now. "Heavy," she said with a smile, "like I'm carrying around a watermelon." Jacob chuckled. Over the past few weeks, Elena had started to relax around him. She'd even begun joking occasionally, which Jacob took as a good sign. When she first arrived, she'd been so scared and withdrawn that he worried she might never feel comfortable around noon. Elena was helping Jacob organize some supplies in the kitchen when she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. She grabbed the counter and took a deep breath. "You okay?" Jacob asked immediately. "Yeah, just the baby moving around," Elena said, but she wasn't entirely sure. The pain felt different from the practice contractions she'd been having. An hour later, Elena was folding the new baby clothes Jacob had bought when another pain hit her, stronger this time. She sat down heavily in the rocking chair, breathing hard. "Jacob," she called out. He appeared in the doorway within seconds, like he'd been listening for her voice. "What's wrong?" I think these might be real contractions," Elena said, trying to stay calm. "They're getting stronger." Jacob's face went pale. "How far apart are they?" Elena looked at the clock. "The last two were about 15 minutes apart." Jacob ran his hand through his hair. "Okay, let me call Dr. Wilson." But when Jacob picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. The storm had knocked out the phone lines. He tried his cell phone, but there was no signal either. "The phones are down," Jacob said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But that's okay. First babies usually take a long time. The roads should be clear by morning, and we can get you to the hospital then." Elena nodded, but she could see the worry in Jacob's eyes. She was worried too, but somehow Jacob's presence made her feel safer. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd come to trust him completely. He'd been nothing but kind and respectful, never asking for anything in return for his help. By evening, Elena's contractions were coming every 10 minutes. Jacob had called the neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, who lived 5 miles away and had experience delivering babies in emergencies. But even her phone was out, and the roads were too dangerous to travel. "I'm scared, Jacob," Elena admitted as another contraction gripped her. She was lying on her bed, and Jacob was sitting in the chair beside her. "I know," Jacob said gently. "But you're strong, Elena, stronger than you know, and I'm not going anywhere." Elena looked at him through the pain. "What if something goes wrong? What if I can't do this?" Jacob reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he'd touched her since the day she arrived, and his hand was warm and steady. "Women have been having babies for thousands of years. Your body knows what to do. And if you need help, I'll figure it out. Have you ever delivered a baby before? Jacob was quiet for a moment. I've helped with a lot of calves and foals over the years. I know it's not the same thing, but the basic idea is similar. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. Did you just compare me to a cow? A very brave cow, Jacob said with a smile. Grin. As the night wore on, Elena's contractions got stronger and closer together. Jacob stayed by her side, helping her through each one. He brought her ice chips to chew on, helped her change positions when she got uncomfortable, and talked to her during the worst pains to help distract her. Tell me about Rebecca, Elena said during a break between contractions. What was she? Like, Jacob's eyes got soft. She was a teacher. Loved kids more than anything. She had this laugh that could fill up a whole room. And she was stubborn as a mule when she set her mind to something. She sounds wonderful. She was. Jacob squeezed Elena's hand. She would have loved you. And she would have been so excited about this baby. Around 3 a.m, Elena's water broke. Jacob helped her get cleaned up and changed, staying calm even though his heart was racing. He'd read every pregnancy book he could find in the past 3 weeks trying to prepare for something like this. I think the baby's coming soon, Elena said breathlessly after a particularly strong contraction. Jacob nodded. I'm going to check, okay? Elena trusted him completely now. When he told her the baby's head was visible, she felt a mixture of terror and excitement. On the next contraction, I need you to push as hard as you can, Jacob said. Elena pushed with everything she had. The pain was incredible, but she could feel the baby moving down. Jacob's voice was steady and encouraging, guiding her through each push. I can see the head, Jacob said, his voice full of wonder. The baby has dark hair, just like you. 3 more pushes, and suddenly the pain stopped. Elena heard a sound. She'd been waiting 9 months to hear her baby's first cry. It's a girl, Jacob said, his voice thick with emotion. Elena, you have a beautiful daughter. Jacob carefully cleaned the baby and wrapped her in the soft blankets they'd prepared. When he placed the tiny infant in Elena's arms, both of them started crying. She's perfect, Elena whispered, looking down at her daughter's tiny face. Look at her little fingers. Jacob stared at the baby in amazement. He'd forgotten how small newborns were, how perfect and fragile they seemed. When the baby wrapped her tiny fist around his finger, something inside Jacob's chest cracked open. What are you going to name her? Jacob asked softly. Elena looked up at him through her tears. Grace. Her name is Grace. That's a beautiful name. It means God's gift, Elena said, because that's what she is. A gift I never thought I'd get to keep. Jacob understood what she meant. 3 weeks ago, Elena had been facing a future with no choices and no hope. Now she was holding her daughter in a warm, safe place with someone who cared about both of them. Over the next few hours, Jacob helped Elena get settled. He made sure both mother and baby were comfortable, brought Elena something to eat, and even changed Grace's first diaper. You're a natural at this, Elena said, watching Jacob gently hold Grace while she rested. She's an easy baby, Jacob replied, but Elena could see how much he already loved her daughter. Grace seemed to sense it too. She was calm and peaceful in Jacob's arms, like she knew she was safe. When the sun came up and the snow finally stopped, Jacob realized he didn't want to call for help anymore. For the first time in 15 years, his house felt like a home. Elena and Grace had brought life back into rooms that had been empty for too long. Thank you, Elena said as Jacob sat down beside her bed, still holding Grace. For everything. For saving us, for taking care of us, for being here when I needed you most. Jacob looked down at Grace's sleeping face, then back at Elena. Thank you for letting me help. I forgot what it felt like to be needed. Elena reached over and touched Jacob's arm. You're not just needed, Jacob. You're wanted. Both of us want you in our lives. As Grace slept peacefully in Jacob's arms, all 3 of them finally felt like they belonged somewhere. The storm outside had ended, but inside the ranch house, a new family was just beginning to form. None of them knew it yet, but this was the moment when 3 broken pieces started becoming one whole. Spring came to the Montana ranch like a gift after the long, cold winter. Elena stood at the kitchen window, watching Jacob teach Grace how to pet one of the baby calves. Grace was now 4 months old and fascinated by everything around her. She would reach out her tiny hands toward the animals, babbling happily whenever Jacob spoke to her. Dud, Grace said, clapping her hands as Jacob lifted her up to see over the fence. Elena's heart skipped a beat every time Grace made those sounds. Grace had started saying dada a few weeks ago, and it was clear she meant Jacob. Elena had never corrected her because, honestly, Jacob was more of a father to Grace than her biological father had ever been. Jacob walked back toward the house, carrying Grace in his arms. He was talking to her constantly, pointing out different animals and explaining what they were doing. Grace listened like she understood every word. "How are my girls doing?" Jacob asked as he came into the kitchen. Elena smiled. She loved when he called them his girls. Over the past few months, Jacob had become the center of their little world. He got up with Grace during the night when she was fussy. He sang to her when she couldn't sleep. He'd even learned to change diapers faster than Elena could. "We're good," Elena said, taking Grace from Jacob's arms. "But someone is getting hungry." Jacob watched Elena prepare Grace's bottle with the same gentle expression he always had when he looked at them. Elena had noticed that Jacob seemed lighter these days, like some heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "I've been thinking," Jacob said as Elena fed Grace. "Now that the weather is getting warmer, maybe we should start working on expanding the vegetable garden. Grace will need fresh vegetables when she starts eating solid food." "That sounds wonderful," Elena replied. "I've never had a garden before, but I'd love to learn." Jacob grinned. "Well, you're about to become an expert. My grandmother always said that a ranch isn't complete without a good garden." Over the next few weeks, Jacob taught Elena everything about ranching. She learned how to feed the chickens, milk the cows, and even help with the easier ranch chores. Elena discovered she had a natural talent for working with animals. The horses seemed to trust her immediately, and even the stubborn old bull would calm down when she talked to him. "You're a natural rancher," Jacob told her one evening as they watched the sunset from the front porch. Grace was sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms. "I never thought I'd say this, but I love it here," Elena admitted. "I love the work, the animals, the quiet. I never knew life could be this peaceful." Jacob rocked slowly in his chair. "It wasn't always peaceful for me. After Rebecca died, this place felt like a prison. Every day was just about surviving until the next day." Elena looked over at him. "What changed?" "You too," Jacob said simply. "You brought life back to this place. Made it feel like home again instead of just a house with memories." That night, after putting Grace to bed, Elena and Jacob sat in the living room talking. It had become their routine. After Grace was asleep, they'd sit together and share stories about their days, their pasts, their hopes for the future. "Jacob," Elena said carefully, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" Elena took a deep breath. "I want to make this official. I want you to legally adopt Grace." Jacob stopped rocking. "Elena, are you sure? That's a big decision." "I've never been more sure of anything," Elena said firmly. "You're her father in every way that matters. You were there when she was born. You get up with her at night. You're teaching her about the world. Her biological father wanted nothing to do with her, but you love her like she's your own." Jacob's eyes filled with tears. "I do love her. More than I ever thought possible. Then let's make it legal. Let's make you her real father." The adoption process took 2 months, but finally the papers were signed. Jacob officially became Grace's father. Elena had never seen him as happy as he was the day they came home from the courthouse. "Grace Matthews," Jacob said, holding the adoption certificate. "Has a nice ring to it." Elena hugged him tightly. "Thank you for giving her a real family." "Thank you for letting me be part of it," Jacob replied as summer arrived. Their little family fell into a comfortable rhythm. Jacob would get up early to take care of the ranch work. Elena would handle the house and garden while caring for Grace. In the evenings, they'd all sit on the porch together, watching Grace play with Buddy and laughing at her attempts to crawl. She's going to be walking soon, Elena observed one evening as Grace pulled herself up using the coffee table. Lord help us, Jacob laughed. We'll never keep up with her once she's mobile. Elena loved watching Jacob with Grace. He had infinite patience with her, never getting frustrated when she cried or made messes. He'd read her stories every night, doing different voices for all the characters. Grace would giggle and clap her hands, clearly understanding that story time was something special. One evening, as Elena was cleaning up after dinner, she heard Grace crying from the living room. But before she could go check on her, the crying stopped. Elena peeked around the corner and saw Jacob sitting on the floor, holding Grace against his chest and humming softly. What's wrong, sweetheart? Jacob was saying gently. Did you miss your daddy? I missed you too. Elena's heart melted. Grace had calmed down completely and was now just nestling against Jacob's chest, making happy little sounds that night after. Grace was asleep. Elena and Jacob were washing dishes together when Elena suddenly stopped. Jacob? Yeah? I need to tell you something, and I want you to know I mean it completely. Jacob dried his hands and turned to face her. What is it? Elena took a deep breath. I love you. Jacob stood perfectly still. Elena couldn't read his expression, and for a moment she worried she'd made a terrible mistake. I love you too, Jacob said finally. I have for weeks now, but I was afraid to say anything. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. Elena stepped closer to him. I don't feel like I owe you anything. I feel like I choose you. Every day I choose this life, this family, you. Jacob reached up and touched her face gently. Are you sure? Really sure? Because once we take this step, I'm not going anywhere. You and Grace are my whole world now. I'm sure, Elena said. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Jacob kissed her then, soft and gentle, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. I want to marry you, Jacob said. Not because of any arrangement or obligation, but because I can't imagine my life without you and Grace. Yes, Elena whispered. Yes, I want to marry you too. They were married 2 months later in a small ceremony at the local church. Grace, now 7 months old, served as their flower girl, babbling happily from Elena's arms during the ceremony. The whole town came to celebrate with them, and Elena realized she'd found something she'd never had before, a real community that cared about her. After the wedding, as they drove back to the ranch, Elena looked at her new husband and daughter and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. What are you thinking about? Jacob asked. I'm thinking about how a year ago I had nothing and no one, Elena said. And now I have everything I ever dreamed of. Jacob reached over and took her hand. We all found what we needed, didn't we? I needed a family, you needed safety and love, and Grace needed a father. It's funny how life works sometimes, Elena said, watching Grace sleep peacefully in her car seat. The worst day of my life led to the best thing that ever happened to me. As they pulled up to their home, because it truly was their home now, Elena felt a peace she'd never experienced before. She had a husband who loved her, a daughter who was healthy and happy, and a future full of possibilities. That night as they put Grace to bed together, Elena watched Jacob tuck their daughter in and sing her favorite lullaby. This was her family. This was her home. And for the first time in her life, Elena knew without a doubt that she was exactly where she belonged. 2 years had passed since that snowy night when Grace was born, and the Double M Ranch had never looked better. Elena stood on the front porch, watching Jacob chase their 2-year-old daughter around the yard. Grace was running as fast as her. Little legs could carry her, giggling wildly every time Jacob pretended he couldn't catch her. I'm gonna get you, Jacob called out in a playful voice, making exaggerated slow movements. No, Daddy. Grace squealed with delight, running toward the chicken coop. Can't catch me. Elena smiled, resting her hand on her growing belly. At 5 months pregnant with their second child, she was finally starting to show. This pregnancy felt completely different from her first one. Instead of fear and uncertainty, she felt nothing but joy and excitement. Jacob finally scooped Grace up in his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy with laughter. Got you, he declared, covering her face with kisses. "Again, Daddy, again," Grace demanded, clapping her hands. "Let Daddy catch his breath," Elena called from the porch. "Come help Mama with the chickens." Grace ran over to Elena, her dark curls bouncing with each step. She looked so much like Elena, but she had Jacob's gentle eyes and his patient temperament. Everyone in town always commented on how Grace was the perfect combination of both her parents. "Mama, baby kicking?" Grace asked, placing her tiny hand on Elena's belly. "Yes, sweetheart. Your little brother or sister is saying hello." Grace pressed her ear against Elena's stomach. "Hi, baby," she whispered seriously. "This is Grace. I'm your big sister." Jacob walked over and put his arms around both of them. "How are my 3 favorite people doing today?" 4, Elena corrected him. "Don't forget about the little one." Jacob grinned and kissed Elena's forehead. 4 favorite people. Though I have to say I'm running out of arms to hug everyone. The ranch had flourished under their joint care. Elena had proven to be a natural businesswoman, helping Jacob expand their cattle operation and start selling fresh vegetables and eggs at the farmers market in town. They'd built a greenhouse, expanded the barn, and even started offering riding lessons for children from town. "Mrs. Chen called this morning," Elena said as they walked toward the chicken coop. "She wants to book another birthday party here next month." Jacob nodded. The riding lessons and birthday parties had been Elena's idea, and they'd become surprisingly popular. Children loved coming to the ranch to ride the gentle horses and pet the farm animals. "You've turned this place into quite the business," Jacob said proudly. "We've turned it into a business," Elena corrected him. "This is our partnership, remember?" That evening, after Grace was asleep, Elena and Jacob sat on their front porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. It had become their favorite time of day, when they could talk quietly and enjoy the peace of their life together. "I got a letter today," Elena said, pulling an envelope from her pocket. "From my mother?" Jacob looked surprised. Elena's mother had tried to contact them a few times over the past 2 years, but Elena had never responded. "What did she say?" Elena unfolded the letter. "She's getting out of rehab next month. Says she's been clean for 8 months now and wants to see Grace." "How do you feel about that?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe she's really changed. But another part of me remembers how she was willing to sell me to pay off her gambling debts." Jacob took her hand. "Whatever. You decide, I'll support you. But you don't owe her anything, Elena. You get to choose who's in Grace's life." "I know," Elena said. I think I want to see her. But here, on our terms. If she wants to be part of Grace's life, she needs to understand that this is our family now." 3 weeks later, Elena's mother arrived at the ranch. She looked different, healthier, cleaner, and genuinely sorry for the pain she'd caused. Elena was nervous, but Jacob stayed close by, offering quiet support. "Elena," her mother said, tears in her eyes, "I'm so sorry for everything I put you through. I was sick and I made terrible choices." Elena studied her mother's face. "You tried to force me to marry a man I didn't love to pay off your gambling debts. I know, there's no excuse for what I did. I was desperate and selfish, and I almost ruined your life." Grace peeked out from behind Elena's legs, curious about the stranger. Elena's mother knelt down slowly. "Hi, sweetie," she said gently. "I'm your Grandma Linda." Grace looked up at Elena, who nodded encouragingly. "Hi," Grace said shyly. They spent the afternoon together, with Elena's mother sharing stories about Elena's childhood and Jacob telling her about life on the ranch. Elena watched carefully, looking for signs of the desperate, manipulative woman who had tried to sell her 2 years ago. But this woman seemed genuinely changed. "I need you to know," Elena's mother said before she left, "that seeing you now, seeing how happy you are, seeing what a beautiful family you've built, it makes me realize that the worst thing I ever did led to the best thing that ever happened to you." Elena felt tears in her eyes. "Mom, what you did was wrong. It hurt me deeply, and it could have destroyed my life. I know. But," Elena continued, "if it hadn't happened, I never would have met Jacob. I never would have found this life, this love, this family. So while I can't forgive what you did, I can be grateful for where it led me. After her mother left, Elena and Jacob sat on the porch again, Grace playing with her toys at their feet. "How do you feel?" Jacob asked. "Like I've finally made peace with my past," Elena said. "I spent so long being angry about what happened to me. But today I realized something important." "What's that?" Elena looked at Jacob, then down at Grace, then at her growing belly. "That night when you found me outside the general store, scared and alone, you didn't just save me from marrying Bill Peterson. You saved me from a life where I never would have known what real love feels like." Jacob squeezed her hand. "You saved me too, you know. I was just existing before you and Grace came along, going through the motions but not really living." "We saved each other," Elena said softly, as if she knew they were talking about something important. Grace climbed up onto the swing between them. "Daddy, tell a story," she requested. "What story do you want to hear, sweetheart?" Grace thought seriously. For a moment. "Tell about when you found Mama." Jacob looked at Elena, who nodded with a smile. This had become Grace's favorite bedtime story, though they told a simplified version appropriate for a 2-year-old. "Once upon a time," Jacob began, "there was a lonely cowboy who lived on a big ranch all by himself." "That's you, Daddy," Grace interrupted. "That's right. And one day, the cowboy went to town and found a beautiful princess who needed help." "That's Mama," Grace said happily. "And the princess had a very special baby in her tummy who would become the cowboy's favorite little girl in the whole world." Grace clapped her hands. "That's me." So the cowboy brought the princess home to his ranch and they became a family. And they lived happily ever after. "With horses and chickens and Buddy," Grace added. "With horses and chickens and Buddy," Jacob confirmed. As Jacob carried Grace inside for her bath, Elena stayed on the porch for a few more minutes. She thought about how much their lives had changed. The scared, pregnant teenager who had arrived here 2 years ago was gone, replaced by a confident woman who knew her own worth and her place in the world. The ranch that had once felt empty and lonely was now full of life and laughter. They'd created something beautiful together, not just a marriage or a family, but a home where love grew stronger every day. Elena's hand moved to her belly, feeling the baby move inside her. This child would be born into love and security, surrounded by parents who chose each other every single day, and a big sister who was already excited to teach the new baby everything about ranch life. When Jacob came back outside after putting Grace to bed, he found Elena still on the swing, looking peaceful and content. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her. "I'm thinking about miracles," Elena said. "How sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we need to be." Jacob put his arm around her. "I used to think the miracle I was waiting for was getting my old life back, having Rebecca and our son somehow return to me. And now I know the miracle was learning to love again. Learning that losing something precious doesn't mean you can't find something equally precious in a completely different way." Elena leaned against Jacob's shoulder, feeling their baby move between them. "I love our life," she said simply. "So do I," Jacob replied. "So do I." As the stars came out over the Montana sky, Elena and Jacob sat together in comfortable silence, grateful for the unexpected path that had brought them to this moment. They'd found their miracle in each other, and they planned to spend the rest of their lives living up to that gift.